Hey, you were listening to our conversation earlier, weren't you? Things just don't go as planned. Really, though. Is getting a house supposed to be this hard? I thought it would be easier to get our hands on one. Hey, why don't you give us this house? You're gonna give it away anyway, right? Then it's better to get it sooner. If you don't give us this house, I'll just stretch my wings and wait here until I get it. A house isn't something you can just hand over. True. I'll give you some time to think about it. But don't make me wait too long, I'm not very patient. After over 20 years of almost no contact, our eldest son, Michael, came back home. It seems like he and his wife are eyeing the $5 million mansion we built. Their true colors showed when they realized their intentions were clear. Michael's statement about stretching his wings here was a threat of elder abuse. But my husband and I won't be intimidated by such threats. We're going to leave this house. Does that mean we can have the house? That's right. Yay! We got the mansion! My husband and I decided to give the $5 million mansion to Michael and his wife and leave. They are happy but seem to not understand the implications of owning this house. I'm Helen, 68 years old, already in retirement. My husband, Steve, for years my senior, is also retired. We hear a lot about seniors struggling financially, but thankfully, we're managing. This is all thanks to my husband's hard work over the years. He started a metalworking company in his 30s, and I helped out. It would have been tough in today's world. However, we were fortunate with the times and managed to keep the company going until retirement. We even built this magnificent $5 million house. We really built a big house, didn't we? Well, we were business owners, so we had to keep up appearances to some extent. The neighborhood buzzed when the house was built. I was a bit embarrassed, but my husband was proud. People think we just bought our house easily with our successful business, but we went through a lot to build it. That's why this house is our pride and joy. You shouldn't overdo it anymore. You're right. Knowing when to quit is important. 3 years ago, we stood at the entrance of our office, looking around the room. We remembered our struggles when we saw the worn-out desks and shelves full of documents. When we retired, we decided to sell the company we had worked so hard on. It was smaller than its peak, so it sold for less than we hoped. But it was more than enough for our retirement. We have 2 sons, Michael and Luke. We could have passed the company to them, but we chose not to. Luke moved out after college, lives far away now. Married with kids, and almost 40, doing well in his career. We didn't want to burden him with a shrinking business. As for Michael, we had no idea what he was doing or where he was. I've been invited by my friend, so I'm gonna get a job after graduating high school. And I'll be moving out. Invited by your friend? What kind of job is it? And where are you planning to move to? No need to tell you. Michael was what you'd call a troubled kid. He was kind until middle school, but then he got into bad company in high school. Steve tried to warn him, and I tried to reach out, but we were just annoying parents to him. Steve, come with me to Michael's room. What's up so early in the morning? I pulled my sleepy husband's hand and headed to Michael's room. Entering the room, which is usually messy, it strangely seemed clean. What's going on? All his clothes are gone. And it's not like Michael to be out of the house at this time. We realized what happened when we saw the neatly empty closet. The day after his high school graduation, Michael disappeared without a word. The reason his room looked clean was that he had taken all his essentials. Luke kept in touch and visited home, but we never heard from Michael. The only contact was a postcard about his marriage and child. We knew his address from the postcard but didn't visit, fearing he'd find us annoying. I remember staring at that postcard, happy as long as he was doing well. But that postcard was from over 10 years ago, we don't know if he's still there. I wonder what Michael is doing now. He was a strong kid. He's probably doing fine. He's 40 now, married with kids. I doubt he's still causing trouble. Wow, he's 40 already. I hope he's doing all right. Steve mentioning Michael made me think of his childhood. We occasionally talk about Michael. No matter how troubled or out of touch, parents always worry about their children. But it's not just about worrying about our kids. We're in our late 60s to early 70s, and life isn't as easy as it used to be. Still, we don't want to burden our kids, so we plan to manage on our own as much as possible. Just when we thought that, we ended up causing trouble for our children. And this situation significantly changed our peaceful retirement life. Steve broke his leg while gardening and had to be hospitalized for 3 months. Already weakened with age, he couldn't walk as before after the fracture healed. Now, he's confined to a wheelchair. Sorry about this. You're handling work, childcare, and now taking care of me. I'm just causing trouble. It's true. But this will probably be the last time you'll have to trouble me like this. On the day of my husband's discharge from the hospital, I pushed his wheelchair out of the hospital, engaging in a conversation that might seem humorless to anyone listening. A few days later, our younger son Luke came to visit after hearing about Steve's discharge. He had visited several times during the hospital stay too. Despite me telling him it's okay not to come because he lives far away, Luke still visits, making me feel guilty yet happy at the same time. Dad, it's great you got discharged. Sorry for worrying you. I'll be fine now. You're not fine. You're gonna live in a wheelchair now, right? Mom's planning to take care of you. Isn't that like elderly care for the elderly? We'll use caregiving services, so it'll be okay. You both keep saying it's okay, but there are limits to what caregiving services can do. I've been saying this, why don't you live with us? My wife and kids are understanding. Even with Steve's new wheelchair-bound life, I insisted on living just the two of us. Luke showed frustration. Understandably worried about us. But we didn't want to disrupt his life. Steve and I agreed, so we didn't need to discuss it further before responding to Luke's suggestion. We really don't want to be a burden on you and your family, Luke. I don't think of you as a burden at all. Even if you don't, we would still feel like we're imposing, right? But with Dad in a wheelchair now. It's okay. We decided to make our house wheelchair accessible, so living won't be a problem. We promise to rely on you if it becomes impossible for us to live alone. We'll call you then, okay? All right. Just promise you won't push yourselves too hard. Despite his dissatisfaction, Luke accepted our decision. Some might think we should just live with Luke since he's offering. But many seniors like us are reluctant to depend on their children. There's a strong impression that living together would be a burden to them. Half a year later, we were back to enjoying our quiet retirement life. We've made progress in making the house accessible for Steve's wheelchair use. Initially, I thought it would be challenging, but the accessibility modifications have made it feasible to assist Steve with the bathroom and bathing. Then one day, the doorbell rang, and suddenly our life became hectic. Yes, who is it? Mom, it's been a while. Michael? Hearing the name Michael, Steve's gaze shifted from the TV to me. Is it Michael? Has he come back? It seems so. Let me go check. I hurried as fast as my slow legs would take me to the front door. It's been a long time, Mom. You've changed quite a bit. So have you. Facing my eldest son Michael after 22 years, I wasn't sure how to act but managed a smile to match his. The woman and child standing next to Steve must be his wife and grandson. I recognized the woman from the photo on a postcard. The postcard announcing the birth of their child arrived 10 years ago. So the grandson must be about 10 years old. Nice to meet you, Helen. I apologize for the late introduction. Come on, Jason, say hello. Hi, Grandma. What a lively boy. I understand there have been various circumstances. Come in and tell us all about it. Feeling frustrated by my inability to move quickly, I laid out slippers at the entrance. But when I looked up after setting out the slippers, Michael and his family weren't looking inside the house, they were looking outside. Sorry, Mom. Before we come in, I want to move some things in. Gotta finish quickly so the movers aren't held up. What things? I struggled to stand up and looked outside. I had assumed Michael might stay for a few nights with a few large suitcases, but there was a large moving truck outside. You're living with Dad, right? There must be plenty of spare rooms. Let me take a look. Come on, Jason, follow me. Wait a minute. As I was stunned by the truck, Michael, with his son Jason, confidently walked into the house. My slow movements couldn't stop them. They moved down the hallway with brisk footsteps. Dad, it's been a while. I'll come and say hi properly later. After a while, I heard Michael's voice from the living room. It seemed he had encountered Steve but had just breezed past him after a brief word. I wanted to ask Michael's wife about the situation, but she was busy talking with the movers. So, I went back to the living room to tell Steve what little I knew. What's going on? Michael and the kid went upstairs. I'm not sure yet. Michael has come back with his wife and grandson, and there's a truck outside. It looks like he's looking for spare rooms. What does that mean? Is he planning to live here? Maybe. I guess so. Watching the movers pass by the living room with furniture, Steve and I fell silent. After a while, having finished giving instructions to the movers, Michael's family finally came into the living room. Sorry for delaying the talk. We want to live here. Please, let us. Michael pleaded. The stuff was already being moved in. How could we possibly say no in this situation? At least a reasonable explanation was needed. Why come back suddenly without any contact for so long? Actually, after I left home, I was helping at my friend's restaurant, but it went under quickly. I couldn't come back home after leaving on my own, so I got a job. I got married and had a kid. But recently, that company went bankrupt. I didn't earn much as I only graduated high school, so I have no savings, and job hunting isn't going well. So, you've come back here because you're struggling to make a living? I know it's selfish. I understand I was wrong. But please, help us this one time. My wife and I will look for jobs, and as soon as we get back on our feet, we'll move out. Steve and I exchanged glances, unsure what to do. We had repeatedly refused to live with Luke, but should we live with Michael? If we refuse, Michael's family might end up homeless. And the stuff was already being moved in. Steve sighed heavily beside me. Having been married for years, I knew what his sigh meant. We'll let you stay until you get back on your feet. But you need to understand, your father is wheelchair-bound and requires caregiving. You'll have to help with that. Thank you. Despite almost no contact since he left after high school, allowing him to come back might seem too lenient. However, Michael seemed to be repenting his actions, and he came to us, pleading in front of his wife and child, for his family's sake. What matters is the future, not the past. Steve and I decided to let Michael's family stay, hoping for a better future. However, I felt a pang of guilt about Luke, who we had repeatedly refused to live with. The next day, I called Luke, feeling sorry, and told him about Michael moving in. So, Michael came back. Setting aside what he's done until now, if someone's with you and Dad, I'll feel relieved. But sneaky of him to move in his stuff first. Maybe I should have been more assertive like that, then I could have lived with you earlier. Sorry, Luke. You've always been so willing to live with us. It can't be helped, considering Michael's situation. Michael should have come back when his senior's place shut down, instead of staying away for over 20 years. He's stubborn in strange ways. What? He was working at his friend's place after leaving high school? Yes. Apparently, it was a bar. Despite running away, he was surprisingly close to home for a while. Hearing Luke's cheerful voice made me relieved. Michael had returned home, and Luke wasn't opposed to us living with Michael. Now our family should be able to live together harmoniously like in the past. However, soon after Michael's family moved in, a tense atmosphere began to develop. Michael, are you making any progress with job hunting? Yeah, I'm on it. Michael is lounging on the living room sofa, watching TV. He's been doing this since he came back home a week ago. The only times he moves from the sofa are for the bathroom, meals, and occasional errands outside. I had stayed quiet, thinking it was okay for him to relax for a while after returning home, but a week seems too long now. I'm home. There we go. Michael's wife, Amy, comes in carrying a bunch of shopping bags and sets them down heavily in the living room. The sight of those shopping bags sends a chill down my spine. They're supposed to be short on money, which is why they came to our house, but Amy seems to be enjoying shopping. Amy, that's a lot of shopping. Are you sure about the money? I got it from my husband. Michael, where did you get that money? Huh? Borrowed it from Mom's purse. I'll pay it back later. You took it from my purse? Come on, don't make it sound so bad. I said I'll return it. Michael acts as if he's done nothing wrong, not even looking my way as he continues watching TV. And Amy seems to be spending money knowingly it's ours. Feeling like there's a thief in our own home, I let out a heavy sigh. Suddenly, a loud crash shatters the peace as a window breaks. Startled by the sudden noise, everyone, the astounded me, the relaxed Michael, and the happily unpacking Amy, turns towards the sound. In the midst of the broken glass lies a baseball. It looks like Jason, our grandson, playing in the yard, broke it. I had warned him to do bat swinging practice in the yard, but to go to the park if he wanted to play with a ball. Clearly, he hadn't heeded that warning. Realizing he's in trouble, Jason slowly walks into the living room, eyes cast down. Already on edge due to the theft incident, I couldn't help but scold him. "Didn't I tell you not to use balls in the yard?" My scolding makes Jason start crying, though he tries to hold back his tears. I felt bad for scaring him with my loud voice, but he needed to be scolded for breaking the rule and the window. Someone could have been hurt by the broken glass. But Michael and his wife, Amy, seemed to think differently. "Hey! Yelling like that all of a sudden, what were you thinking? Shouldn't you first check if Jason is hurt? Scolding him immediately for doing something wrong, what era's parenting is that?" With Steve in another room, I had no allies in the living room and ended up being the villain. "Jason, I'm sorry for yelling at you so suddenly. That was wrong of me." Glared at by a teary-eyed Jason, I felt guilty and ended up apologizing. Unable to meet his eyes, I looked at the broken window instead. Since Michael and Amy have no money, I doubt they plan to compensate for the window. The more I thought about it, the more stressed I became, so I stopped thinking for a while. It's been just over a week since Michael's family moved in, and I'm already in shambles. At that time, I should have immediately consulted with my younger son, Luke, but I hesitated. Since Michael had just moved in, I felt it was wrong to ask for help so abruptly. Moreover, I was concerned that reaching out to Luke might lead to a conflict with Michael. That's why I was reluctant to seek Luke's help. However, this was a mistake. A few days later, I left home early for an errand and returned in the evening. I felt something was off as I entered the house, so I quietly walked in without announcing my arrival. I sensed a different atmosphere, although nothing specific seemed wrong. As I neared the living room, I heard Michael and Amy's voices. I felt relieved, realizing my unease was just a misunderstanding. However, the conversation I overheard was disturbing. "Your dad seems healthier than I thought." "Yeah, I came back because I heard he collapsed, but it was just an injury, not an illness." "Damn, someone gave us the wrong info. I can't do caregiving. There's no way I can get that close to such an old man. I don't want to either. But we agreed it's better to show our faces while they're still alive if we want to inherit this house. If we show up only after they're gone and then ask to move out, we might clash with the brother, remember?" "I know, but it'll be trouble if they live too long." "Oh, I wish they'd just disappear soon." Hearing this devilish conversation, I felt a chill run through my body. Michael and Amy must have returned to inherit our house, hearing that Steve had collapsed. I had a bad feeling after hearing their conversation. They had stated caregiving was too much for them. So, how had Steve been all day while I was gone? I hurried to Steve's room. "Steve!" "Oh, you're back. Can you change my adult diaper?" "Have you been in this room all day? Did you eat breakfast and lunch?" "No. Michael kept sending me back here. Told me not to come out." It seemed Michael and Amy, finding caregiving troublesome, had ignored Steve's needs, probably thinking if he didn't come out, he didn't need food or toilet help. I was at a loss whether to cry or be angry, confused by their callousness. "Ah, you heard our conversation." I heard a devilish voice behind me and turned around in shock. There stood Michael and his wife, Amy, looking down on us with disdain. In my rush to check on Steve, it seems they noticed I was back by the sound of my hurried footsteps. Really, things just don't go as planned. Right. Who knew it'd be this hard to inherit a house? I thought it'd be easier to get our hands on it. Michael and Amy, having been caught discussing their true intentions, brazenly revealed their true colors. They seemed ready to change their strategy to something even more sinister. "Hey, why don't you just give us this house? You're going to give it to Michael anyway, right? So, it's better if we get it sooner. If you don't give us this house, we'll just stretch our wings and wait here until we get it." I was terrified by Michael's threat, gripping Steve's hand tightly. It was a threat to make us suffer if we didn't hand over the house. In just over a week of living with Michael's family, my money had been stolen, and Steve had been neglected all day. This was financial and caregiving neglect, abuse against the elderly. The mere thought of elder abuse escalating filled me with fear. Holding Steve's hand tighter, I felt a deep sense of anxiety. A house isn't something you can just hand over. That's right. Give me a little time to think about it. But don't make me wait too long, I'm impatient. Michael and Amy laughed and went back to the living room. Left alone with Steve, a heavy silence filled the room. What should we do, Steve? It's a troubling situation. Steve and I were at a loss on how to handle Michael's family. It wasn't about whether to hand over the house to them or not. It was about whether to punish them for their behavior. That night, I called our younger son, Luke. Mom, perfect timing. I was just about to call you. What's up? About Michael, he worked at his friend's store after graduating high school, right? I heard about a store run by a friend of that friend, which opened around the time Michael graduated. I'm wondering if that's where Michael worked. Why are you digging up information about a store that's long gone? It's not gone. I confirmed it over the phone. The store manager said Michael quit within a year after fighting with a coworker. Apparently, he kept hopping from job to job through connections, getting fired each time for causing problems. So, the stories about the store closing and his company going bankrupt were all lies? It looks like Michael has been drifting around without stable work even at 40. He probably came back because he had nowhere else to go. You might want to have a word with him. I realized their reason for coming back was based on a lie. We had been deceived and welcomed Michael's family into our home. Laughter from Michael and Amy echoed from the living room. With the treatment from Michael's family over the past week, my anger only grew. By the way, Mom, why did you call? Oh, it's nothing. Your story has settled it. What do you mean? I had intended to consult Luke about whether to punish Michael, but realizing it was all a lie from the start, I made up my mind. I told Luke about the events of the past week and asked for his help. Then, with a fury as if he was about to leap through the phone, our younger son Luke burst into anger. That's terrible. Threatening you to hand over the house. Don't worry about punishing Michael. I have another favor to ask. Oh, feel free to say anything. After hanging up, I turned to Steve with determination in my eyes. And he returned the same gaze. Deciding to act quickly, we started making plans the next day. Michael, Steve, and I are going to leave this house. Does that mean we can have the house? Yes, that's what it means. Yay! We got the mansion! Michael and Amy rejoiced, not really listening to me. Are you listening? We'll handle the paperwork, okay? I'll leave that to you. I'll just give you the documents to sign, so make sure you fill them out properly. And we are going to stay at Luke's place, so we'll be here until our move is arranged. Please do. But leave as soon as you can. Seeing Michael and his wife Amy looking so happy was unpleasant. They don't seem to understand what it means to own a house, having always been irresponsible. It's rather ironic. A month later, we're staying at our younger son Luke's house. This was what I had asked him for over the phone. He and his wife and children had kindly welcomed us, being supportive of living together from the start. It's very comfortable here, unlike with Michael's family. However, Luke's house isn't modified for accessibility, so Steve seems to be facing some inconveniences. But our stay here is temporary, so I hope he can bear with it a little longer. And I expect Michael to call in a panic soon. Just as I thought, a few days later, Michael called. What's this about? I was expecting your call. About that payment, please take care of it. I knew why he was calling without him having to say. Therefore, when I answered the phone and heard the panic in Michael's first words, I couldn't help but laugh. Why do we have to pay for the accessibility renovation costs? You're getting the house, so it's only right that you pay for those expenses. Michael's panicked call was about the costs of making our house wheelchair accessible. 3 years ago, when Steve started living in a wheelchair, we made our home accessible. We remodeled the bathroom and toilet, eliminated steps throughout the house, installed sliding doors, and added a lift to the stairs, spending lavishly on these modifications. These modifications, which cost over $200,000, had enabled me to care for Steve. Including the payments over the past 3 years, we were still just below the $200,000 mark. Changing the name on a mortgage isn't easy. However, there are exceptions for situations like divorce or death. We managed to change it, citing our aging as the reason. I heard you guys sold your company and have money. Why are you still paying off the loan? We used to run a business, right? It's kind of a habit to feel anxious without money on hand. We're old, and you never know when you might need money. Michael and Amy are almost penniless, so they obviously can't pay nearly $200,000. So, Michael came to an obvious conclusion. Then we'll just sell the house. If we turn it into cash, we can pay off the loan and still have money left. No problem at all. That might be difficult. Why? It's a big house. Well, there's a loan for the renovations, so you can't sell it just like that, right? Maybe a voluntary sale. But who would want a house so extensively modified for accessibility? Elderly people with physical limitations wanting a mansion. Hard to imagine. Then, if we demolish the house and just sell the land? We've got a mortgage on it, so if we demolish it, we'll need to remove the lien, right? Can you handle that, Michael? Besides, demolishing a house costs money too. Given its size, it might be around $200,000, or maybe less. Hold on, then how should I go about getting rid of the house? I don't know, Michael. We just gave the house to you because you wanted it. I don't know anything about what happens next. Also, I'm not sure if you know, but there are taxes like the gift tax and property tax. Don't forget to pay them, they have due dates. What? There's still more to pay? The house itself is pretty old, so it's not worth much anymore. But the land, it's big, right? That's still worth close to $4 million. $4 million? It's worth that much? This is no time to be happy. It means you have to pay taxes on this $4 million. We were paying more than $20,000 every year in property tax. I'm not sure about the gift tax, but it might be around $2 million. What? Taxes are that high? Have you only ever paid things like car taxes or local taxes? Michael, who's been drifting from job to job and living day to day, seems unfamiliar with these money rules. My husband and I have run a company, and we've paid astonishing amounts of taxes. So, our sense of money might be a bit numb, thinking this amount is just a bit high. But for our eldest son, who's not handled big money, it seemed like an astronomical amount. I can't pay that kind of money. You wanted a big house, didn't you? If owning a big house is this tough, I wouldn't have wanted it. Mom, come back. Help us out. Look, Dad's in a wheelchair, right? Life must be inconvenient at Luke's place, right? Come back. We'll help with the care. Sorry, but we're fine. We're staying at Luke's for now, but we're moving to a senior apartment near his place that's designed for accessibility and includes caregiving services. What? What should I do now? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the details. If you can't make the payments, maybe you'll face foreclosure? Foreclosure? Does that mean I lose the house? Hey! Help me out! The house that you built is going to be gone. You don't want that, do you? We debated whether to abandon the house, but we decided to leave it to punish you. So, do whatever you want with the house. Consider this our final lesson to you. If you learn from this, start working seriously. I hung up on my eldest son, pushing him away. That was an expensive lesson. Do you think so? If Michael turns serious because of this, I'd say it's still cheap. We, now in our 70s, laughed for the first time over a difference in opinion about raising our children. Our eldest son and his wife seemed to have abandoned the mansion we gave them and moved somewhere else. Later, I heard the house and land were seized and put up for sale. According to relatives, they moved to a cheap apartment far away. There are rumors they went bankrupt, but even bankruptcy doesn't wipe out tax payments. So, while the renovation debt might be cleared, the gift tax still needs to be paid. If the house and land are sold, they might be able to pay the gift tax. But if the house is a nuisance and only the land is sold after demolition, the cost of demolition will be deducted. And since the land is seized, it'll be auctioned or sold publicly. Such sales usually go for about half the original value. But even if the $4 million land is sold for about $2 million, the $2 million gift tax can be paid. So, the $200,000 demolition cost would be the remaining debt for our eldest son. From over $1 million to $200,000, that's a relief. But for our job shirking, nearly penniless eldest son and his wife, it's still a harsh amount. It's sad that their child has to live in extreme poverty, but learning life's harshness early might be good. They should learn that life costs more than just a pane of glass, and take us as a bad example. My husband and I moved to a senior apartment near our younger son's place. With this arrangement, we can quickly seek help from our younger son if needed. He keeps suggesting that we should all live together since we live close by. However, we still don't want to disrupt our younger son's family life. We think it's a matter of our personalities, and we'd like our younger son to give up on the idea of living together. Nonetheless, since our homes are close, our younger son's family often visits us. Today, we're once again enjoying a pleasant time talking and laughing with our younger son and his wife.